I'm Brian Clark. I work at the Consularium. With my remit, I look at games-based learning and, more particularly, games design and education, games design in the classroom. I too am seconded. At the end of November last year, I was given a 23-month secondment from my post as Principal Teacher of Computing at Portobello High School in Edinburgh. So I'm relatively new to the job, and in February this year, Charlie Love, who's not with us today, he's gone snowboarding, he works with me, and we both work on this idea of building games in the classroom. The reason for that is because in Scotland, we've been doing this. We've been listening to the learners, listening to the technology, and what that's saying is that kids want to make games. The technology is available, the software is available, so let's use it. And it's stated explicitly, this idea about creation, not consumption. And that's explicitly mentioned in our new 3 to 18 curriculum. So all levels, from way down primary school, way up to the high school, and beyond. These are just a few of the outcomes from our arrangements documents. But they're here. So by learning the basic principles of a programming language or control technology, I can design a solution to a scenario, implement it, and evaluate its success. Using software, I can create a game, application, or other animation. I think, we've got a great opportunity to actually then work with a number of different companies, different authorities, to build resources for our students to build their own computer games. The Scottish Qualifications Authority have picked up on this as well, and they're actually in the process of developing a set of national progression awards at different levels. And that specifically kind of focuses on this idea of design, the creation of media assets, and then developing a computer game. So the work that Charlie and I are doing at the Consularium is looking for software that can be used within any level of classrooms to support this National Progression Award, but also to support teachers in their learning as well. So I want to quickly take you through some of the things that we are looking at and how we're hoping to use that through GLOW, the Scottish Schools Digital Internet, and how we can support learners. So just now, there are lots and lots of different environments that are available. These are just some of them that we will look at. You'd probably be familiar with some of those things. But in particular, what I'm going to look at today is Kodu, Scratch, 2DIY, and UDK. This is just because it's ones that Charlie and I have decided that this is what we're going to focus on first, for a number of different reasons, which I'll go into. But there's lots and lots of environments that are being used in schools just now already. Yesterday, the Media Molecule folk talked about this idea of hybrid learners. Now, if you go and make a game, you are becoming a hybrid learner, because you've got to deal with kind of the creation of media assets, storyline, character, narrative, music, developing a set of instructions that solve a problem. These are a set of skills you need. They're hybrid learning skills to build a game. So as you create games, and the more complex your game is, the amount of skills you need increases. So that's this little diagram to kind of explain that. So how we started this in February, we decided, well, there's a lot of schools who are building computer games anyway, just out with Curriculum for Excellence, out with their normal curriculum. So we thought, well, let's try and get the kids to build their own computer games and enter a competition. So we set up this competition, which will be held at the Scottish Learning Festival this year, where the kids have been asked to build a computer game. Doesn't matter what platform they use, build a computer game, but as long as they control a character, and that character has to do something. They have to perform a task or solve a puzzle. And that's the only specification they have. And within a week of this being launched, Charlie and I were flooded with kind of more inquiries. So what can we do to get involved? And Charlie and I have spent some time going out to schools and helping support whatever environment they've chosen to use to get their students to work as a team, to work individually, to build computer games. So really looking forward to seeing those entries. So that's kind of how it started. But we thought to ourselves, well, what we need to do is that in order for computer games design to work in the classroom, you need to empower the teachers. The teachers have to know how to go ahead and do this, how to use the software in their classrooms to support their pedagogy. So, starting at the lowest level, we looked at two-dimensional games. And in particular, how do you create two-dimensional games and find some appropriate software? The first piece of software was 2DIY, which has been spoken about a lot at the conference. So, I think there was about 16 teachers came to a training event we had in Stirling, 16 teachers from across different authorities in Scotland. They came to a training event where Alan Yeoman from Too Simple came up. We spent 2 days there teaching the teachers how to use 2DIY. And through our GLOW group, we're sharing resources And during those 2 days, that's them there, all working away, all working away, learning to use 2DIY and really engaging with it and thinking about how they can use that in a classroom to get their students at young years to build computer games. What they then did is using Glow, is the games they made, they uploaded to Glow to share it with each other. And let's have a quick look at some of the games that they made. So again, I won't spend too long looking at these, but these are the types of games that were uploaded to Glow, made by the teachers as they were familiarising themselves with the software, so they can go and take it into their class. So here's a couple. There should be some sound there, actually. Never mind. Which means my next slide has got full of interviews. So can I just check the sound on this, actually? There we go. So we asked the teachers after the 2 days, how do you see games design working in your classroom with 2DIY? What do you think of the training event? Has it empowered you to kind of teach games design? And here's what they said. Have I remuted it? Yeah. See me? 2 degrees in computing, can't even unmute a blooming computer. Sorry, so let's have a quick look at what some of the teachers said after the training event.
Because it's very simple way for young students to be involved in game production, including nursery, from 1 to 2, and I think obviously it's about personal image, which is the bigger future.
So she's talking about the
Community dealing with the children being able to work together,
That's a bit frustrating. What they're saying is they really enjoy using 2DIY and they think that it can really be used within their classrooms to support this idea of building computer games. And the chap who's going to appear last says, look, it's fun. The children will be engaged with this and they're looking forward to building it. So that's what they're talking about there. But then we kind of think to ourselves, well, yeah, 2DIY is a great tool and you can customize it, you can make your own characters, you can use a bit of ActionScript to do the kind of scripting side of it. But at one point, you've got to progress. So Charlie and I started thinking about this idea of progression. How do you progress from relatively simple two-dimensional games in early years to producing the kind of 3D games that are being used and played by kids on a day-to-day basis? So we start thinking to yourself, well, if you're going to progress, how do you progress? Well, then you think about, well, let's stick with two-dimensional games, but let's try and add some more value to that. So again, the idea of character and narrative, you know, it's important. It's been discussed a lot over the past couple of days in terms of games-based learning. But if you think about characters, look at these things. Can you name these? Who are these people? Who's from left to right? Who is it? Then. Right. These are iconic characters. They're iconic characters that are the success of the games. Now, if you ask your students to go and create a character, now you've got all the kind of rich activities that come with that. They can then think about, well, let's have a marketing strategy. Let's make things branded with these iconic characters. You then think to yourself, well, let's make our own characters. Let's have a look at some character descriptions. So if you're thinking about some different people, some different characters, there's a couple of character descriptions. So let's say they're coming from a book or from a novel, or you're writing about it in your classroom. You think, well, I'm going to make a computer game that's using characters of these descriptions. And you can think about, well, let's start sketching out some characters, those people here. Out of interest, which one do you think's the grumpy person? Which one's the happy person? Square's grumpy, and the circly person is the... It happens all the time. You know, so you think about engaging with character, engaging with how that character is meant to look, then drawing it out, then trying to make that character be representative. I think it's a really exciting way of kind of developing your skills. Your skill set's is getting higher because you're thinking about the character. So you then have to think about, well, let's go and make characters. Let's use other bits of software. Use Photoshop. Let's model some characters. Let's build some models. Let's take my little penguin character and let's put him into a computer game. You know, so you think, well, how can I do that? Well, tools like Scratch allow you to do that. You can import your own characters. You can build things. You can draw things. You can do whatever you like. So you can take your little penguin chap and typical, eh? All right, sound. Me and my million things in the PowerPoint. I know. It's frustrating. You know, this always happens when you're teaching a class. You go, oh, I've got a fantastic lesson for you today, kids, and your computer crashes. It's awful. But anyway, that video I was about to show you is showing you how you can use tools like Scratch to bring in something you've built elsewhere. Let me just try again. Go on. I'll just skip past that. So, well, this video was supposed to show. So I thought, well, I'll record the video to save doing it live kind of thing. But I'm sure you've all used Scratch before, but you can paint new sprites. You can use the inbuilt editor to draw your own one, but you can also import images that you create elsewhere. So if you want to try and create some nice characters, you probably want to use software that's out with the Scratch environment, which can increase your skill set. So imagine my penguins appeared on the screen there, and I've made a wee program to move them left and right. And then you think to yourself, well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to find a picture to use as my background. So again, I could just draw it, or I could then start thinking, well, what about can I find a picture on the internet? Let's go and find a picture of Antarctica. And then you can start discussing things like Creative Commons licenses, because I'm allowed to use pictures like this. So you get the kids to think about finding an image, the appropriate image, they can then copy, save that, put it to their desktop, and bring that into the Scratch project. So I'm hoping maybe you'll play and you'll see my little penguin. It's very exciting, isn't it? Don't stop. Wait, there we go. Right, okay, so there's my little penguin that I'd made before. And I'm going to then get the students to think about importing images they might have taken. Might take a digital camera, go and take a picture of the surroundings, find the Creative Commons picture from the internet. Great lessons there, they're going to put it in. There you go, they've got your little penguin that you've made out of clay. You take the picture of, you scanned in some Photoshop skills to cut it out, bring that into your main character, finding an image, painting your own sprites to use within your environment, and all of a sudden you're starting building games that are a little bit more complex than 2D DIY because you're using skills that are out with this particular environment in a two-dimensional way. So what I'm going to now do is think about using some of the sprites that come built with Scratch. I'm going to put a fish in there because no penguins eat fish. And then what I'm going to do is give the fish some instructions and we'll make a little game based on that. So if we'll just quickly go through here. So there's my little fish. And quickly putting together your instructions. So there's a scripting language there. So you think about those curriculum for excellence outcomes, this idea about being able to build a script and program something that's real, that's it there, some real computing skills there about kind of thinking about logic, thinking about process. And it's really rewarding. I've taught Scratch in my classroom for the past 3 or 4 years. And the kids just love it. They're so creative with it. And if we just have a quick look at how the game works now, because what I'm going to do after this is talk a little about sharing and how working together as a team. So there's the game that I've made, moving the penguin, the left and right arrows, catching the fish. I've got my wee score counting up there. Not the most complex game, but the process behind it, a bit more kind of engaging, a bit more complicated. And you can be as creative as you want with Scratch and be as complex as you want with the scripting language. Then you think to yourself, right, computer games are built in teams. So you get your kids together and say, well, let's as a team build this. And you have to think, well, how are we going to get the students to work together? And say, well, give them different jobs about creating music, about creating images, about kind of building scripts. But then you think, well, I've only got one computer. I've got 4 kids around that one computer. They can't all be using the same machine to build these individual characters, individual objects. But within Scratch, I mean, my little fish character here, that's the controls for the fish. But that could quite easily be used in another project. But Scratch is great, and what people don't do with Scratch is actually use this idea of exporting the sprite. And when you export the sprite, you also export the rules that go with that sprite. So then you can then get your kids to put on maybe a blog or a file server. They export the sprite as a file, and they can put it up to be shared. You can download sprites that have been created by other students and bring them into your Scratch project. Again, widening the skill set. Okay. So there's lots of 2D games, game creation tools. Scratch being one, 2DI being one. I'm a big fan of something called Greenfoot. Lots of things you can look at. But then eventually you're going to want to make 3D games, and that's what kids want to do. They want to make 3D games. That's the type of games they build. But there's more 3D is always going to be more complicated. You know, you've got to kind of think about kind of 3 planes. It's very, very difficult. So how do you start with that? Well, again, the same way, find the appropriate tools. So how do you start? We love Kodu. Kodu is wonderful. And the reason why we love Kodu, because if you've not seen it, it's meaningful technology. It runs on the Xbox, runs on the PC, and it's entirely icon-based. The kids create games they can play on their Xbox. It's entirely icon-based. They don't have to worry about typing things in and programming, but they are still creating control scripts to get their characters to move. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to work in partnership with Microsoft. We've got myself and Charlie are going down to London on the 19th, I believe it is, to do a bit of training with Paolo Broni from Microsoft, work with them, teach myself and Charlie how to use it, and then we're going to go to Girvan Academy, and work with them and their cluster schools in the same methodology that we did with 2DIY. Take the teachers, take 16 of the teachers from primary school and high school, get Paolo up from London, myself and Charlie, spend 2 days engaging with the teachers, getting them to use and learn how to use Kodu, so they can go back to the classrooms and use it with their kids. Now, the type of game they make, of course, is going to have a context, needs to have a storyline and all those things. That's something that's kind of the pedagogy of the teacher, and of course, it's, when you make games, they're always going to be more successful if they've got a good storyline and characters and all those types of things. But the teachers have to be comfortable with the tools that they want to use. So we're hoping that the success of the 2DIY can be replicated with this. Oh, excuse me. Don't know what happened there. But again, at one point, Kodu is going to have its limitations, because you can't really create your own characters. You used all the characters that are built there already. You can customize them, change the color, but you can't create your own one. You can change the terrain. So what do you move on to next? Again, this idea of progression. Well, recently I came across a thing called Platinum Arts Sandbox. And it's a little bit like Kodu. It runs on the PC. It's free. It's cross-platform. It's lovely. And you make games. Technical department using some kind of AutoCAD software and creating chairs and whatnot. You could put from there. You could create 3D objects in the subject, and then you can import it into this world. This environment lets you make side-scrolling games like this, or RPGs or first-person shooters. But the idea behind it is that kids are using games that are, will look like this. Here's the Batman trailer, Arkham Asylum. Game of the Year, built with a thing called UDK. And look at it, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Like cinematic cutscenes and all these things. And kids want to make this type of game, because that's what they play. Now, we can argue a little bit about, it's really appropriate to be using things like this in the classroom. I'm not saying we should be using this in the classroom, but this is the games they're playing and the type of games they want to make. UDK, the toolkit that was used to make that game, is free. You can download it. You can use it in school. And my colleague Charlie, kindly enough, put together a little video to illustrate that.
So this is
Some volume.
SketchUp and the Unreal Development Kit. So I'm going to zoom in onto the Tower of London. And as you know, Google Earth has a number of 3D models in it. And these models are available on the Google 3D Warehouse. So from the warehouse, we can download the particular model, save it to the computer, and we can actually import that and retexture it in the Unreal Development Kit, which you can see now. So this is the model that's been loaded here. So wouldn't it be great if we could play a game in this Tower of London? So here we are, using a first-person view. We can wander around. There's a spaceship. I wonder if we can think we can actually go into the spaceship and fly around it. Now from this view, up here we can look at all the architecture, and see how the fortifications have been put together. And this land in the central tower here, and we can see the view that it gives you of the whole area. So this actually puts in context the architecture that we've got for this particular set of buildings, but it's actually an exciting way to see it. Now, using the Unreal Development Kit, our learners can put together levels for a variety of different games that are professional, that are of the highest quality. For example, this level here, this was put together using all the assets that are in-game. So it was put together using cubes and so on that are actually part of the game engine. So this takes a third-person view, so we just stand behind the robot. We can wander around and move around in the environment and interact with it, use the gates and so on. Now with enough time, you can actually create, using the in-game assets, you can create this environment. And let's have a look at this. Just wander through this in the spectator mode. So there will be automated players in the game, flying around and so on, but we'll just look at the lighting and the way that it shades the different areas. It's fantastic, and this is tremendously exciting for our young people when they look at it and realize that they can produce this using just the assets that are within this game. It's absolutely breathtaking what you can do with these particular tools. And the Unreal Development Kit is one of a number of tools that are available now and free.
That was Charlie, my colleague, with that video. How awesome is that? It's free. And you can take things from Google SketchUp, which is free. And you can dump it in and you can make an environment. Now, when you look at the interface there, if I could go back in the videos a little bit, you might notice there's 3 planes of view. It's a complicated looking interface. It really is. But that's why we need this progression. You just start off in primary school, young years, using things like 2DIY. Then increasing their skill set by using multiple tools, things like Photoshop, GarageBand, whatever, to create the different assets. Move on to 3D. Perhaps they could step back from kind of the hardcore coding to kind of get used to 3D environments. Something like Sandbox, quite nice, quite light. And eventually, once you get to here, you've got a bigger understanding of how things work together. And if your techie department or whatever are using things like Blender to make models anyway, Google SketchUp, you can get them to build things. And then you can just bring them into your game. I mean, I just think that's absolutely amazing. That's where we're hoping to go with this. Blender, for example. Does anyone use Blender? No? It's free as well. Again, you can see it's got 3 planes of view here, in the same way that UDK does, and Unity and those types of engines. But if your technical department are using something like this, you know, it kind of familiarizes the students with that type of interface, and I think that's important. I think the thing about Blender, though, is that you can make games in Blender as well. If you've got any Python program, is anyone a programmer here? Programmers? No. Well, yes. You know, Python. Yeah, Python's a programming language. You can program Blender with Python, so the kids can actually make objects, make worlds within Blender, and program it within Blender. And there's an amazing opportunity to kind of get kids to be really creative and engage with software, engage with processes that are of really quite a high level. And the thing is, they want to do it. They actually want to do it. So how do we then extend this? Well, what we're going to be doing is the tools that I've shown you. Charlie and I are going to be sitting and working with partners, Microsoft, 2DIY and whatnot, and build a set of tutorials which will be hosted within Glow, our learning environment, to get the teachers to become familiar and comfortable with this type of software. They don't have to be experts, they just have to see that they can do it. The tutorials can then be followed by teachers, by students, and they can then be used to support these national progression awards that the SQA are now offering. You're going to think to yourself, well, there's other devices. I mean, you can't really use UDK to build on the iPhone. So what we're going to be looking at over the next couple of years, we're hoping, is how to get kids to build games for mobile devices, which I think is quite exciting too. Again, the Apple SDK, which I think you have to pay for, was quite frustrating, but that uses a language called Objective-C. Now, Objective-C is an awful, awful, awful looking language. Unless you are a small-talk programmer, it's going to look completely foreign to you. So the challenge is how to find the appropriate software to get kids to build for that platform. Because I think that as soon as you say to them, right, we're going to do some iPhone development, let's use the Apple SDK and use the Smalltalk programming language, all that instant hit of building models is going to go away. So we need to find a toolkit that's almost like a layer on top of the SDK to allow students to build those types of games to get that immediate impact. Then they can go into the code a bit later on, but they need to see that impact first. This is what we're hoping for. At the end of my secondment and onwards, Charlie and I hope to create these flexible resources for creative learning, to empower the learner, and ultimately to create a smarter, more ambitious Scotland. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry about that.